Philosophy Society podcast for MMU 2020, the year of holy hell. My name is Laura Perrin and I am part of the Philsoc committee, and my podcast co-host is...
I'm Mark, the Vice President of the Philosophy Society.
And so the podcast that we wanted to sort of run this year is obviously, I think the people listening to this will know what's been happening in 2020, and due to COVID and social distancing and basically not wanting to get anybody sick or cause any extra deaths that we don't need to, we're going to try and do a lot of our conversations online. And yeah, we want to talk about, what kind of things do we want to talk about on this podcast, Aaron?
I mean, what kind of things don't we want to talk about?
Yeah.
Like, we can talk about everything. Like, it's going to range from general philosophy, like utilitarianism, Kantian ethics, like just your basic philosophy, to politics, to even discussions on social media. Like, just any topic can be covered.
Yeah. I think we want to look at sort of topical politics kind of stuff. We talked about, I think it was like cancel culture, the sex and gender spectrum, safe spaces, cyberbullying, but then also some cross-discipline topics, touching on art, literature, politics. Obviously, that's your combined subject, Aaron. And then also, what else does philosophy combine with? Politics, history, English, psychedelics.
It can combine with anything. Like,
yeah,
even
exactly.
football. Like, there was philosophy of like football tactics and stuff. So technically, we could combine that, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, good, excellent. So we're going to move on. So that's our podcast, what we're going to be doing this year. We're going to hope to release about 4 of these podcasts per month, hopefully, on different topics. And yeah, so to move forward, to introduce the committee, myself, Laura, I am the intermediate representative, which means that I liaise between different years, different academic years, academic staff, and across the disciplines. And moving on to introducing Meg.
Hi, I'm Meg. I'm the treasurer, which means I deal with all the financial side of the committee and the society, and basically make sure that everything we do is funded. Moving on to Pippa.
Hello, I'm Pippa. I'm the chair of the society, which basically just deals with the overall running and making sure everything runs smoothly, if they can. We know that 2020 has shown that things can't run it. But yeah, I'm going into my 3rd year and I'm studying ethics, religion and philosophy. Over to you, Paige.
All right. Hi, I'm Paige. I'm the events organizer for the society. That basically just means that debates, discussions, anything that we collectively decide to do, I kind of figure out and organize. And I'm going into my 3rd year of the philosophy degree. And that is all from me.
I'm Aaron. I'm as I said before, I'm the vice president of the Philosophy Society.
Vice chair.
Vice chair. I just like to call it vice president because it sounds cool, but
VP sounds good, right?
I kind of help co-run it with Pippa, and we try to run it probably better than most philosophers could, but
yeah.
Yeah, actually, Aaron, we forgot to kind of introduce ourselves a little bit and say something about ourselves. Sorry, Aaron.
Okay, so I'm a guy who loves philosophy because I just love to debate. I just love to discuss important topics. Like, I just find it fun, just spreading my opinions, pitting them against other people's opinions. Like, although I do see the benefit of, using it to genuinely change humanity for good, at the same time, it is for me a vehicle to entertain myself, philosophy.
Great. And you're the same as me, Aaron, aren't you? You're going into your 2nd year. So I'm going into my 2nd year. My 1st year I was combined with English literature, but in my 2nd year I'm going to be studying single honours philosophy. Yeah. So we want to move on now to talking about why having a society, a philosophy society, of course, but also any kind of society, why that is important in a university for students. And Pippa is going to lead on this one.
So before we started the podcast, I thought of a few ideas, and the first idea of why we wanted a society really was to be able to facilitate and create a space for students, whether they're on the philosophy degree or doing a different degree and just have an interest in philosophy, to be able to discuss and get engaged with philosophical issues. Another reason why we started the society was allow people to socialise, so whether that's to people that, as I just said, on the degree or in different years, because even me, like I found last year, that I was able to, even though I was in my second year, I was able to talk to people in their first and then third year. And then another reason why we think it's important to have a society is to create a fun and a fun place where we're able to discuss it rather than it being serious, because sometimes it can be quite challenging picking up these ancient or old philosophical texts and trying to get a grasp and a handle on it. So we just wanted to make it fun and more accessible really, because it can be quite challenging, as we all know.
I mean, in addition, seminars can be very intimidating. So a lot of people won't necessarily discuss in those seminars, they'll just keep to themselves, they'll keep silent. But in this society, it will give these kind of shy people an opportunity to, you know, express their opinions, spread their knowledge, just get involved in the discussion. Like, this is a safe, like, I know the term's pretty controversial, but it's a safe space for good discussion, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else to say about that, Meg or Paige?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like myself, I'm very dyslexic, so I struggle with the reading and the writing and all the interaction. So this has been like my safe space, so to speak, because like it's just helped me progress my thoughts and learn in a different environment, which is more fun, engaging, and like less pressure, less social pressure, less academic pressure, and just a nice way to socialise. So yeah.
Paige?
Yeah, Philosophy Society in particular, it's not just for philosophy students. And that's why it's such a good thing. It gives a platform for people from all types of degrees to come join in with something that's a little different, but incredibly useful and applicable to any degree and any life. And that's something that I think we should all aim to get involved with.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with everything that everyone said, and I think the social side of it is very important. Meeting up once or twice a week, having a place to go. And we were just, before we started recording the podcast, we were talking about how isolating perhaps this time COVID could be for some people that are coming to university for the first time, or away from home, and then now it's not going to have such a physical contact as perhaps in previous years because of the COVID social distancing. So I think having a society, having a place to go where you can speak to like-minded people is going to be more important than ever, to talk about things, to make you feel like, yeah, I'm not alone in studying or what, you know, just thinking about things, the big questions or whatever. Yeah, Aaron, did you have anything more to say?
I was about to say that what you said about Paige, about everyone being able to, you know, be a philosopher. Like, at the end of the day, that's what's so good about philosophy, that anyone can be a philosopher. Philosophy can be applied to anything. Like, philosophy isn't just like a discipline on its own. It's a discipline that can be combined with many other disciplines. It's more of a trait, like the ability to philosophize, the ability to think about stuff on a philosophical level is an amazing trait to have, and just make you overall a more complete person.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about why having a society is important at a university. So obviously philosophy is something that we all love and have in common. Like, that's why we're studying it or whatever. So now we wanted to talk about why philosophy is important, and Paige is going to lead on this one.
Yeah, as I've said before, that question has a different answer depending on whoever you're asking it to. Personally, for me, philosophy is important only to the extent that it's applicable to real world problems today. Any sort of theorizing that doesn't result in helping to make significant change to the wrongs in the world, I see no relevance in. So for me, that's the extent of philosophical importance, not just sort of intellectual stretching, but really attempting to make a difference in the world.
Is it not like fun though to theorize about like stuff that won't actually change anything? Is it not entertaining?
I think you can argue for a side of entertainment to philosophy, and that's fine if that's the aspect of it you enjoy. That's not what it is for me, though, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Paige. I think that philosophy, yeah, as you said, can be an intellectual exercise, or it can be interesting or exciting to theorize. But there are practical applications for it. Like, I mean, talking about like how a student can use philosophy in their future career is, there's so many aspects to studying philosophy or philosophizing in general, like critical thinking skills that can be applicable to any career or any other discipline. To be able to analyze statements with a critical eye is so important at the moment now with this, what is it called? Like the media kind of whitewash or propaganda, that especially in the United States and in some countries of Europe, there is a little bit of propaganda going on coming out of the media. If we look at who owns the media in the UK, for example, like 90% of the media outlets are owned by oligarchs or rich people. Like the London Evening Standard is owned by a Russian guy and his son. People that don't live in this country don't pay tax in this country, and their interests do not reach the little people, the normal working person. Their interests go way beyond that into money and corporations and so yeah, I think philosophy is important to be able to critically think in this current climate. Yes, Aaron.
I mean, a good example is the recent like migrant case where people are talking about, oh, Britain's already like full up. Like, if people actually looked at Britain as a country, they'd realise it isn't actually that full up. Like, only like less than 20% of our landmass is actually used or built upon. Yet people still claim that Britain is like full up.
I mean that to be pedantic, there is like obviously the green spaces that people want to keep, like National Trust land or like land that they want to keep wild or like farmland, obviously, that we need to feed people. So I mean 20% of the space being urban or built upon, that's kind of normal. But I think people mean that we're full up as in the houses that we already have or the capacity that we currently have. We can build more, of course, but just to be devil's advocate.
Of course, like, but I do think that we can't claim that, especially with the numbers like coming in, like we can't claim that, oh, it's going to destroy the country.
No,
I mean,
that's a different argument, but yeah, land mass is different.
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. So sort of both of you are coming from these different angles. Laura, you're pointing out, statistics, that the logistical side of can we do this in landmass, and then Aram is saying more, isn't it suspicious that we're talking about landmass when these are tiny amounts of people coming through in the grand scheme of things?
Exactly.
And that's where you get to the applicable area of philosophy. A lot of the stuff that's peddled to us constantly, it's hard to sort of see outside of the bubble that you're put inside politically due to lots of factors, and being able to sort of philosophically approach a situation, go through the literature, look at the things that have been said before that have happened historically with a critical gaze, helps to see outside of that bubble and pick these things apart and weigh these situations against one another, which are important.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that we end up getting bogged down with, like, I think sometimes, like, when people discuss something, they use an analogy, and then people start discussing the analogy, the facts of the analogy, and it's like that was used as an analogy, necessarily. So then people start picking at things that don't matter, or like this kind of this whataboutism that a lot of people are using in politics. It's like, oh well, Dominic Cummings did this, but what about Theresa May? She did, on another side, or but what about this person? I mean, it's more. I'm thinking it's more prevalent in. But yeah, Jeremy Corbyn did this, or but so and so did this. What about this? And it's this shifting the argument all the time. So you're not actually talking about the facts or what's important or it's shifting the argument to sort of wrong foot your opponent, or to shift the argument, or I don't know.
I mean, that definitely is one of the more useful things about like more logical philosophy, is, you know, you take an argument, you put it in basic terms, you completely strip it down of all its content, and then you see whether this argument is valid. And then you can't get into these kind of nitty-gritty arguments about context and who said that and who said that, and maybe if we compare it to this, because it is the argument at its bones and whether that can apply to a situation, which is incredibly useful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it allows you to unearth and overcome like the rhetoric in it as well, like just completely get rid of all that.
Because I mean, but I say as well, like learning about logical fallacies can be extremely like useful in that regard, because I think whataboutism is considered like a fallacy, and like you can definitely point out arguments as straw men, because what you'll commonly see is like people using straw men to try and like, you know, refute your point. Like if you know about like logical fallacies, you can point out like why someone's argument is so flawed.
I mean, I think somebody said to me when I said I was going to study philosophy, and they said, I think, you know, my advice to you would be, and this is a guy who's studying 2 PhDs at the same time, concurrently. I know, right? And he's doing, I think it's neuroscience and confirmation bias. So it's something to do with along that inherent and confirmation bias. He said to me, my advice to you would be to learn to meditate, because it's going to help you to be able to hold 2 or even 3 conflicting sides of an argument in your mind at the same time. Like to be able to you know, suspend your own beliefs or your own what you've always thought was true, and then take on someone else's or another side of the argument, and even then another side of the argument, and to hold those in your mind and to address them all is very, very difficult, and it's something that you have to train yourself to do. And he believed that meditation was the ability to sort of step back from the way that your mind just runs into different emotions and past and sort of you know, future wants and desires, and step back a little bit from that and observe your own mind, and to be able to observe the way your mind works and the way your mind follows different arguments, like reactionary sort of like, does it bring up an emotion in you, does it trigger you into a sort of, to be able to step back, observe that, instead of just follow it down the rabbit hole and go, oh my god, I was triggered, I was angry, that made me angry. Well, step back, why did that make you angry? What was it about what that person said that made you angry? Is there another side to this story? Is there a reason why, you know? So these kinds of things can really, really help in philosophy. And then, yeah, obviously in the wider world, looking at the media, the news we're being told, the politicians, what they're doing, the propaganda that's coming out of them, you know. So yeah, I think that personally, I think that was a great piece of advice, to meditate, to be able to improve your critical thinking skills. I don't know, does anyone else on the committee, does anyone else meditate?
I don't meditate, but you definitely have to calm yourself in a debate, because when you like let all your emotions out, when you get too angry, you'll just lose focus on what your original point was. You won't be able to argue as well. You're more likely to make logical slip-ups, and you could also come across as like a dumbass, so that's another part of it.
In terms of meditation, absolutely not. I'm too busy a person. My brain is always, you know, firing too quickly to get myself in that calmer state. But I like the idea of objectivity that this kind of meditation would allow or would breed. Because, I mean, when I engage in any kind of critical discussion, I don't summon objectivity. I don't think it's a plausible thing. I use empathy. That tends to be my strategy. Empathize with the opponent as opposed to objectively consider the argument.
I mean, like I get what you mean, and that's very similar to perhaps how I always work as well, and what I'm trying to do differently in this 3-year degree is I sent him one of my essays, and he was like, yeah, look, great essay, Laura, but he said, I know that that's your opinion, and that you're actually confirming your own opinion by writing that essay and doing that research, and that's what you believe is true. and you therefore then wrote an essay confirming what you think is true, your own political belief. He said, have you ever tried to sort of step back from that and maybe present not the opposite side just as a mental exercise, but just to try to look at it from another side and maybe do the research on the other side, instead of saying, I believe free speech is important because, instead saying, is free speech really important, and does it, everyone thinks it's a given that free speech is important, but maybe try to look at the reasons why there might be some reasons or possible reasons, can't think of another word, to say that free speech should be sort of, brain's not working, where it should be sort of put into sort of parameters and said, well, maybe, okay, not everything should be able to be said, not everyone should speak with impunity or be able to speak with impunity. For example, it's just using it as an example, but I've always believed that free speech is the number one important thing, and without it, we're lost. But taking that as read is so easy, and then writing an essay about it is so easy. So where maybe I should question that instead of just confirming.
Some people don't think it's important because some people actually think it's harmful. I mean, so you'll have, let's say, Nazi, like fascists and stuff, saying free speech is bad to because it stops you from keeping order. While you'll have some people on the left saying it's bad because it can cause intolerance. But I think that's all you had something to say, Meg, because I know free speech is your field of interest.
Yeah. So I struggle with this because the idea of free will, free speech is not something free speech not so much, but free will is something I don't necessarily believe in.
Right.
So I find it difficult to see how, if you don't have free will, you can have free speech.
Right.
If that makes any sense to anyone. So yeah, like, I guess I don't really know how to phrase what I want to say. I guess, like, looking at like free speech, of course you should be able to speak your mind, but at the same time, is it really your own mind? Because you don't have the freedom. Well, I don't believe you have the freedom to make that decision. If that makes any sense.
I mean, under that kind of logic, though, should anyone say anything?
Well, this is it. This is why I struggle with this kind of area, because I've not done enough reading on it to fully understand it.
I mean, there's a guy that sort of says we should look at our justice system because he doesn't believe that free will exists. In that, so say someone is a psychopath or someone who murders someone, this person believes that everything in their life was leading to that point, and it's not fated, but it's, you know, it depends a lot on your parents, your genetics, your upbringing, where you were born, all of these things, these choices. You have choices, but do you really have choices? If you look at things like your microbiome in your gut, you have bacteria that crave sugar, you have bacteria that crave, so whatever you've been eating, your body will then crave. So is that free will when you reach for the chocolate bar, or your body is telling you that you're craving this thing, and are you really? And so there's many factors that push you towards thinking, well, really, what is free will? Have I decided to move my hand like this? Where did I make that decision? Where was that intention? Why do I speak like this? It's the genes of my family that make me speak with my hands, or these kinds of things. That how much of myself is my conscious decision? So therefore, why do we punish people for killing or for stealing when life has kind of pushed them that way? And I'm not saying they 100% don't have free will, but it's a conversation we should have.
How about the case where, let's say you've lived an affluent life, you don't really have any hardships, like everyone's been lovely to you. Let's say you've lived the perfect life, but you suddenly get the urge to kill or whatever. Couldn't that be you using your free will to just kill someone?
Well, I mean, there's a case, isn't there, of that gentleman that suddenly, a guy in America who was started acting very strange, and he started getting thoughts in his head and being told to do things, and he really questioned it, and he left a note saying, I leave my brain to science because this is so weird. And I think he went on, either he killed his wife and child, And then he went and sort of like, stood on top of I think a bell tower or something, shooting people, and then killed himself or something. But he left his brain to science, and they found out that he had a tumor pressing on something that affected your behavior, and he knew that his behavior wasn't real. And I don't know, like it's a very personal thing, but I don't know if anyone has ever had contact with someone who has had mental health issues, somebody who is in psychosis, or somebody who is having a breakdown. This person is a person that you know, but you know they're acting strangely, and they think they're acting perfectly normally, or this is the way things are, and you know that it's not. But in their mind, they truly believe that whatever they're being followed, or they're being persecuted, and it's very, very difficult. It's almost impossible to convince them that they're not, because of either the synapses, or I don't know. I'm not an expert or anything, but something has happened, a trauma, or something has happened to cause this person to have delusions, or what do you call it? When you hear auditory hallucinations or things like that, if something causes them, and it's very real to that person. So how can we say then that, I mean, this is a whole question of free will, because that guy had a tumor, and that was a physiological thing. But mental illness, we so don't understand at all. Like, there's go on, sorry.
Mental illness, it isn't as complicated as I think a lot of people think. It's kind of a scary territory, because it's not visible. It's something that goes on in the brain, but people could have delusions that are triggered as things as simple as hormone misfires, if the brain's producing too much hormone, which a lot of studies will suggest is actually due to sort of early onset trauma or sudden trauma, which then causes hormone production to increase or decrease in the brain. And then a combination of these different hormones changing is what tends to give way to the sort of more severe mental disorders, where people can have hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, things like that. But that, for me, in terms of free will, difficult thing to bring that, I think, into the discussion, because in that sense, you're already working under the belief or illusion that free will exists. To bring that into question, that some people have their choice taken away from in those situations, or they can't be fully responsible for their actions. And I think Meg follows this kind of line of thought as well, that whether free will exists or not, we live by it, we make decisions, or we actively think we do. So whether it exists or not doesn't actually matter, because society couldn't function without the belief that we do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does affect things like the justice system or the education system. When you look at things like that, like you're saying, it doesn't matter that whether we have free will or not, we still make these decisions. But if we look at the way, like, our justice system is all about punishment rather than rehabilitation, or, I mean, like this guy suggested in this podcast, that if you could give a pill to somebody who is a psychopath, you give him a pill and it cures his psychopathy, would you give that pill? Would you still punish that person for having killed 5 people? Do you give the pill?
Sorry, I didn't explain that well enough. Then I sort of assumed. Sorry. It's not to say that. I completely get what you're saying, especially with the justice system. That's a big one in the argument. It's, should these people be getting punished for something they could not have prevented? There was no way it could have been prevented at all. But the sort of standard line of the argument that I take, and that Meg takes, is that if we cease to do that, so if we sort of cease to punish people, cease to put things in places that were punitive for people making decisions that impact other people negatively, society could not function, because there would be no punishment. These people wouldn't be sent away. They would just continue to do what they do. So it might be the case that they're not responsible, and it might be the case that in terms of morality, that means they don't deserve to be punished. But that
locking them up for the safety of society is one thing, but punishing them, like in America, they still have the death penalty. In some countries, they cut off hands, they cut off, or they punish physically with like whippings or things like this. I mean, obviously, we think morally, I would say, in a Western society, that is not right. But America is a Western society, and they still give the death penalty, or the police shoot to kill, or these kinds of things. It is punishment. It's not deterrent. I mean, deterrent is a different thing, but like locking somebody up to keep the rest of society safe is one thing, but punishment, which is sort of enacted to put somebody in isolation, to put somebody in 23-hour-a-day isolation, is a pretty harsh punishment.
Laura, yeah, of course. I mean, that's a fantastic point to raise. There's a massive difference between creating an unnecessary amount of punishment and then preventative measures. No, I completely agree. I think the extent to the way that the justice system attempts to punish offenders is bizarre and unnecessary and not morally correct in any way, shape or form. But then that's less free will now and more, what is the morally right approach to these people, which is equally interesting.
But the conversation about free will does feed into the conversation about whether to punish or just to keep the rest of society safe by locking people up that have done something wrong, so that they don't do any more wrong. That there's a huge difference, and also in the way we like feel as a society towards people who offend. Like people get really angry and get really with the torches and stuff, like vigilantism and stuff like this. I mean, I think a conversation about whether somebody has free will, that to have done those bad things or those offences, is a conversation that affects a lot of things.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's the great thing about philosophy, just all these things kind of massively interconnecting across. Especially the note about, I really like that you brought up sort of emotional reactions to these kind of things, because one of the more very simple sort of arguments that our choices are our choices is emotional reactions. That if on some level we were truly aware that we could not decide things, that other people couldn't decide things, the emotional reactions we have would not occur in the way that they do. We'd have no emotional right to get angry about things, to feel hurt about things, because it's just cause and effect. It's a really interesting line of argument. I think you'll stumble across that in metaphysics at some point this year. It's really interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, anger serves a purpose, doesn't it? If you look evolutionarily, like emotions serve a purpose to keep the tribe safe, or to like the fight and flight, is something that sort of is physiological, but it's like from the emotions, like caused by your feeling that I'm, I need to keep myself and my family safe, so I need to react right now. So these things have an evolutionary or a biological purpose. I do believe that emotions, I don't think we've evolved enough to say, well, it's only cause and effect if we have no free will. Therefore, why do we react angrily? We can step back and sort of think about that, perhaps by meditation, or by observing, why did I react that way, or questioning, or just taking a step back. Like that whole thing about counting to 10 and taking 10 deep breaths before you react is so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. And I think there is something in that connects to meditation and mindfulness and being present in the moment. Why am I reacting this way? Questioning your motives. Aaron.
I was about to say, that's another thing that it's not even just general people, but the government as well. They just need to take time to think a few steps ahead into the future. Like, let's say in the US, they're trying to jumpstart the economy again by not having this lockdown. What that's going to do in the long run is it's going to damage the economy, because the stock market's going to crash for more deaths. Therefore, there's going to be another economic crash. Like, that's what people need to do. People need to actually just think a few steps into the future. I feel that's a trait that philosophers kind of have, of taking a backseat, thinking about how this will turn out, and then making a good informed decision.
I think that to an extent, though, that there is a kind of privilege that allows people to not worry about the future. I think if you're in positions of influence, power, you don't have that same immediate concern about future prospects that most of us do. So they don't really have to worry about the economy in a year's time. Not personally.
I have to say I disagree, Paige. I think it is more, I would say that when you're on the lower economic spectrum, that that you can't think about the future in that way, or you can't really think about, because if you're worrying basically about how am I going to feed my family this this month or this week, if you're living sort of paycheck to paycheck, or you're living off the land or something like that, you're more thinking in your immediate sort of sphere. And I think it's a privilege to think about the future, that people who are rich are generally the ones that save, that think about inheritance, that think about their family, that think about leaving their name on something, or, you know, entrepreneurs that invent something that's going to change the world. I think that it's a privilege to think about the future. I would say it's a sort of an opposite, you know, that, but politicians sadly only think about their 4 years or whatever, or 8 years they're going to be. So that short-term thinking is where it's basically looking after themselves. It's a selfishness. That short-term thinking is a selfishness, rather than thinking about the long-term good of the country or the world or the climate or you know, the human population, the land, whatever. They're thinking, oh, how am I going to gain from this next 4 years? How can I get, like Tony Blair, get consultancy and get a book deal? And, you know, how is this going to benefit me? And how can I just get through this 4 years with everyone thinking I'm wonderful without actually doing anything of any consequence?
I wouldn't disagree that the train of thought you just followed then was initially what I considered before I spoke, because there's sort of different ways of thinking about the future, and I completely agree that it can be a privilege to have that luxury and not worry about here and now. But then also, to clarify what I meant, is that it's a privilege to also not worry about the future. It's the privilege to be able to think about it and not.
Yeah.
Coming from an economically poor background, it's, you know, what can I afford right now? I literally cannot afford to be thinking about a year's time. But at the same time, you have the awful anxiety about the fact of what a year's time is going to be like. So it's the dual of not being able to think that far forward, but at the same time being terrified of what's to come of that far forward. And people in positions of luxury don't have to have that same fear. I mean, not over common scenarios, obviously complex things, personal lives, maybe they do.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of difference that politicians don't have that same concern that you or I are having about what the economy is going to look like in a year's time.
I mean, I was about to say as well, because I say Jeff Bezos type, let's say the economy crashes, he won't be really badly affected. Like, yes, he may lose some money, but he'll still be a billionaire. In addition,
100%.
let's say a politician just destroys the economy, just does awfully, just ruins the country. He won't get lambasted for that. Well, he will, but what will happen is he'll end up, like, you know, being able to write a few books, you know, being able to live a pretty cushy life after.
I mean, just look at David Cameron.
Hasn't Jeff Bezos just like surpassed? Haven't they invented a new word for his wealth or something? Hasn't
They've
he
invented a new word for it?
For his wealth, I think so, right? Because he is the one that's made the most money out of COVID, because everyone's buying everything online, and who, you know, does better than Amazon?
Like a trillionaire now or something stupid.
Oh no, it's way surpassed that. Something, yeah, they've invented a new word or something.
Fuck
because,
me.
Yeah.
I think I did see. No, go on, Aaron.
I thought maybe billionaire. That might be
something.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think I saw like I can't remember whether it was a meme or something ridiculous like that, and I'm not sure to what extent it was accurate. But I think it said, if since one of the pyramids were built, if you'd saved sort of £10,000 every so often since then until this day, you still wouldn't have as much money as he does.
Yeah.
And my mind melted. Who needs that? What does he do with that much money? Why do you need that much money? What does it give you?
Yeah.
God.
I mean,
Just like,
costs like 30 billion to feed the world.
Oh yeah, the dude could he could sneeze, and the amount of money that comes out of his nose could feed, could sort out world hunger, you know. But,
and then the thing is as well is you would be beloved by everyone if you were the person that cured one of the biggest horrors that the world faces. You would still be rich as heck, and everyone would love you for the most part. It's a win-win scenario. I can't fathom why they don't do it.
I wonder if something happens to you, like mentally, you know, when you get that rich, that you just, I don't know, you just detach, or you just, I don't know, like.
But then surely how can you even enjoy being rich if you're kind of switching, detaching in that way? What
They
gratification
don't.
are you even getting?
I mean, have you not seen that sort of study that, happiness, where it comes to happiness, as long as you're not worrying about paying your bills, there's a certain amount of sort of wealth where you are happy, and anything above that does not increase your happiness whatsoever. And it's especially in countries where there's less of a disparity between the rich and poor that people are the happiest. So I think was it something like, I don't know, a South American country or something like that, where there's no real elites or there's no celebrities or something like that. So nobody was looking at their neighbor with a Porsche and wishing that they were them. So they were actually the happiest people. Was it not Ghana? Was it called? Oh my God, I studied it. Bhutan. It's like BHUT.
Bhutan?
Yes, Bhutan. And their government has a policy of happiness, that they have made that a part of their policy, and that people, like, instead of gross domestic product, they have like a gross happiness product, that they measure by going around and asking people, and they've made it sort of a mission to keep their population happy.
That's kind of like a utilitarian utopia in a way.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with wealth. Nothing at all to do with wealth.
I studied that in geography. I remember doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is somewhere in South Africa, isn't it?
Yeah, but I can't remember. Yeah, because I studied it, or I taught a class about it, because it was about happiness in English when I was teaching English, and it was about, I remember they had to do a project about what do you think makes you happy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of bizarre under the government that we're under to think of a government out there promoting happiness for their citizens. Like, this is what we are committed to giving you.
And it has nothing to do with capitalism or profit gain or, making more money or, doubling your savings or whatever. It's absolutely nothing to do with that.
I mean, I am reaching a bit here, but maybe, these ultra rich people are just kind of capitalist psychopaths, because, I mean, your standard concept of someone who suffers with psychopathy is that it's sort of increasing thrills, like every time it's not enough for them, so it's increasing, chasing like this impossible high that they can't achieve. And with the capitalist monstrosity, more and more money is the same thing. It's in chasing the inevitable high of having it all, which you can't have.
Yeah, there's a thing like about sociopathy. Like, I mean, I used to live, I don't know if you guys know, I used to live in Switzerland, and it's like the sort of, what do you call it, like adventure, extreme sport capital of Europe or whatever. And there would be people there that, you go on a roller coaster ride and they're like, oh my God. And there are other people that would just be like on a river, on a grade 5 river, and just like, meh, whatever, jumping out of a plane, meh, whatever. It really is that kind of, I'm not saying that these people were sociopaths or anything, but there is that kind of, what gives you excitement, what gives you that high, exactly. And for some people it's, risk, this thing about like the guys on the Wall Street people, like, risking other people's money, that gives them like a massive high. And going down a river wouldn't.
1 in 5 business leaders, I think, are psychopaths or sociopaths.
I think it's sociopaths. It's not psychopaths. Is when you do
but
go and kill someone.
I think sociopaths are more like emotional and like more aggressive, while psychopaths are more calculating. They don't really.
Yeah, there is. I think on the actual medical test for it, the difference between sociopaths and psychopaths, it's tiny. It is a tiny degree.
But psychopath goes towards the sort of the thing, like they will actually commit crimes, whereas sociopath knows how to use people, like they have no empathy, and they know how to use people to their own advantage, but they wouldn't cross that line into committing crime. I thought a psychopath was someone that would commit a crime and feel absolutely nothing. So that was the difference.
No, not from what I recall. I might be wrong. It might have changed. They constantly change like the
parameters.
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
I was going to say though, have you guys done the psychopath test or not?
I have actually. I have. The thing is, can I just point out before I answer that, right? No, that these tests have been shown to not be very thorough and can get confused with different kind of personality disorders.
I mean, it's pop psychology at the end of the day, isn't it? Doing a questionnaire to find out whether you're a psychopath.
And I did it a long time ago, and I scored worryingly high. Worryingly high. But I did read somewhere that sometimes they can be conflated with autism, and that a lot of children, well, not a lot, but some children are actually diagnosed with autism when they should be diagnosed with psychopathy, but that psychiatrists are reluctant to diagnose a child as being a psychopath because there's no treatment. There's no way it's fixable.
But at the same time, like you said, it is a spectrum, but it is also a spectrum with, they're talking about now like I was saying before we started recording, about the lack of social skills from not having that face-to-face, looking at someone's facial features or body language, that is turning into narcissistic personality disorder with a lot of sort of children, that they, especially with, social media, Instagram, looking for likes, looking for that, they're getting their kicks, they're getting their dopamine from people liking their photos, but not actually building their personality as a person, but actually just building their ego or what people see online. It's not actually who they are.
I think that's a really interesting take on that, Laura, because if that's what we're rolling into, sort of a world where people aren't able to process emotion properly in people that they meet in real life, that is literally on their kind of like sociopathic scale. It makes it easier to hurt other people if you can't process the emotions they're feeling. It's scary.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
But I think,
my computer's about to die. I'm gonna get
psychopaths do know what people are feeling, but they just don't care about it. They just use it to manipulate people.
Yeah.
They're very good at reading people, but which I feel that's the difference between a lot of people like this modern age and psychopaths. Like a lot of people who overly use social media, is that they lack the ability to really read social cues, whilst a psychopath could.
Yeah, like I'm watching a TV series at the moment called The Fall, which is about a serial killer.
Oh, that's so good, with Jamie Dornan in it.
Yeah, it's great in it.
I wish they didn't use him, he's so attractive.
He makes serial killers sexy and it's not good. But he is a psychopath, and he's the way he's manipulated his child's babysitter into like basically doing his dirty work for him. It's crazy. She thinks he's in love with her, and so she goes around doing all this thing and tries to destroy evidence.
The thing is how old is she? She's what, 15?
Yeah, she's 15, and like the way he managed to manipulate her mind, mind blown. Like honestly, the way he just got her to do his dirty work.
Can I just say though, in all fairness, that wasn't him pulling out his intense intellect. That was just her kind of.
No, it was quite easy, to be fair.
To see him with his shirt off.
Sorry, I missed that. Is this a real thing? Is this a documentary or is this a TV show?
It's just a TV show. TV show, yeah. It's not real. But he is. But the way he manipulates all sorts of people, like he plays mind games with his victims. Like he'll break into the house and like move objects slightly or steal underwear so that they know that someone's been in the house.
Oh, with moving the underwear and the sex toy on her bed for her to find.
Yeah, like he plays mind games. It's crazy.
Oh, okay. So the difference between psychopaths and sociopaths, just to make sure that we are being, correct.
Factual, yes.
Yeah, is that psychopaths are classified as people with little or no conscience, whereas sociopaths do have a limited, albeit weak, ability to feel empathy and remorse.
Okay.
So that would definitely follow kind of what you were saying, Laura, that psychopaths are more likely to follow through on these violent crimes because they wouldn't process it emotionally.
And again, sociopaths are more likely to like commit aggressive, like unplanned crimes. So spur of the moment, spur of the moment fits off like anger. Like
that'd make sense because they'd feel anger, whereas psychopaths wouldn't. Yeah,
like a psychopath is more likely to have a really like well planned murder. Or sociopaths the type to like beat someone over the head with a baseball bat or something.
How did we get onto this topic?
What were you talking about?
I think we were asking why philosophy was important.
Philosophy.
Stops you being a psychopath. So sorry, then to bring it back round. Why philosophy is important. Yay. So you feel empathy and emotion. No. So I think we touched on so many things there that was so interesting. Like we were talking about like critical thinking, rhetoric, ethics, obviously. I don't know, like for me, I think philosophy is important in that you ask the big questions. Did anyone sort of like,
Mm,
did anyone start off when they were younger going, what is the color blue?
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, why is it the same color red that you see that I see? I mean, did anyone ask those kind of, I don't know if they're the big questions, but you know, those sort
I
of,
remember when I was little in the bath, I used to sit there and be like, why am I me? Why am I not someone else? And I'd just sit there for so long just going through it.
yeah.
Mental. I know, it's really
Having
bad.
deep thoughts from age 8 there, clearly.
Literally, I think that's why I didn't like baths as much. You used to have showers after.
Aw.
No time to think.
Yeah.
You know,
A
when
bit
I
basic.
feel, like you know, like solipsism. I used to think about that a lot. Like I used to think, oh, what if everyone about me is like some sort of android or robot? No, I'm the only actual human.
You're the only consciousness in the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Mm.
See, I used to be convinced, and occasionally still am, that I was the main character in a TV show. So if you've seen The Truman Show, this is literally what I was convinced of before I'd ever seen it. And everyone was filming me, and everyone I knew was actors, but I didn't know, and that there was a world outside that was just watching me and getting their kicks.
Yeah, I had that as well. Yeah.
Fully believed it. Did you ever just, you'd look in the mirror and you'd be like, I know you're watching me.
I kind of like, I used to write a diary like in a performative way, as if that one day someone's going to read it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
So did
yeah.
I.
Oh, I did that, yeah.
yeah.
Because I stopped writing journals because it was if some young Victorian girl was writing it. Like today was sorrowful.
Yeah, very performative. Like one day
Very.
someone will be reading about my life because it's so important.
Maybe we can read the diaries on stream. Maybe we could like on one podcast we could get all the diaries out and just read them.
No,
No, mine are just so sad.
no. Mine, like I wrote the most in my diary when actually literally nothing was happening in my life, like the most boring periods of my life. And I'm like, why is this happening to me? This and going introspective, it's not that interesting. Not at all.
It's really not.
No.
Fun though.
Say again, Aaron.
It'd be fun though. Maybe we could get someone else to narrate it.
I want
Have some
Morgan
like funny
Freeman.
voices, impersonators or something.
So any other kind of reasons why we think philosophy is important? I think we covered quite a lot, eh?
One reason is because it will give you principles. Philosophy will give you like, if you adopt a certain philosophy, then it will define how you think and it will allow you to bypass like societal norms. So let's say you have a Kantian philosophy or more voluntarist philosophy, like for an issue like gay marriage, in the 60s you would have supported it because it would have been in line with your philosophy. Like it allows you to become like as progressive as like, you know, rational as possible with your views on like social issues, because it's simply because you have that philosophy to ground your thought.
I think I see what you mean, but I think that it can be quite dangerous sometimes to be dogmatic about one person's philosophy or one school of philosophy. Sometimes I see like classmates and stuff. I mean, you go through phases, I think, and so like at the moment, like Kantian philosophy really speaks to you, and then maybe next year you'll learn about another philosophy and go, oh my god, this is the one, you know. So I think it's good to be flexible and sort of open to others, but yeah, grounding in a philosophy, yeah, definitely that would give you some kind of ground. But I don't know, I mean, I know some of the lecturers have said that I'm a whatever, I don't know, I can't think of a philosopher right now, like I'm a Hegel philosopher or I'm a bloody blah philosopher. Do you feel that you found one that speaks to you? Anyone?
I mean, I would say I'm a Marxist, but I'm skeptical. At the same time, like, I wouldn't say I root all my beliefs in Marxism, but I don't root all my beliefs in any particular philosophy. But my my philosophical knowledge and my knowledge of philosophy has kind of allowed me to realize that I shouldn't base my thoughts on real life issues on societal norms really.
Yeah,
based on what I think.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Like I resonate a lot with deterministic and free will writers, like when they're discussing all of that. Like I do reading all that, I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from with this. And then kind of like ethics, anything remotely environmentalism, feminism, humanity, like anything that's looking out for the good of humanity, I'm kind of like, yeah, there for that. But yeah, no, I'm quite broad. I don't have anything specific.
Okay. Paige, Pippa?
I'm still researching, still trying to find, because I find that I change, like especially as we have the lectures and stuff. So
for me, it's less a particular philosopher and just kind of whatever sort of philosophy I can use for my own causes. So the things I believe in pursuing, so environmentalism, feminism, as Meg pointed out, equality, things like that. That's what I look for in philosophers, and if they can provide a way of defending that, of giving a good argument for that, or a way of helping the situation, then that's what tends to appeal. At the moment for me, that is Simone Weil, but that's because I'm heavily focusing my dissertation on her.
Oh, that was it, Simone Weil. Sorry, not Hannah. I was thinking it was Hannah Arendt for some reason. It's Simone Weil.
You know what? Interestingly, Hannah Arendt is wonderful. And these two women had like these incredible thoughts, and they were around at the same time and just sort of constantly missed each other and never really had a chance to meet or talk. And it's one of those things that, I just wish they would have had a conversation that I could look back on and read, because it would have just been wonderful.
I mean, that's we're so rich at the moment with like sort of the modern day philosophers talking and having these conversations, long form conversations with each other. But yeah, I was talking about this the other day with some of the lads from philosophy class, and how it does disappoint me sometimes that it is so male centric, you know, that I don't want to force female philosophers that we're not there, but I do feel that when people talk about certain generalizations, that it's been looked at from a very male perspective. And that, for example, like life is suffering, this whole narcissism, I do feel that that's more of, sorry, Aaron, and please excuse me, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I do think that's a very male trait, especially young male traits, that this kind of egocentric narcissism. So after we just spoke, Pippa about and Paige about thinking we were the only ones in the world, and that the world revolved around us, but yeah, I don't know. It does disappoint me sometimes, and I like to read female philosophers.
Well, no, I mean, philosophy is male dominated. It always has been, and a lot of the philosophical thoughts that we work with today are male thoughts. I mean, that's something that a lot of us have to. I'm constantly critical about this when I'm working through things. Is this the thought of a man? Is this something that applies to just men? And rationality is a big one on that. The amount of focus that is put on it completely erases the female way of knowing the world. It's very irritating.
Yeah, that's a really, sorry, Aaron, that's a really interesting thing that we look at in English, about sort of like when we look at Virginia Woolf, or and we look at the different way that females and males tell stories, like the different way that the narrative, you know, women are just a bit more sort of not linear, basically. So if you look at like Winston Churchill's biography or autobiography, it's like this happened and this happened and this happened, and sort of Virginia Woolf kind of tells it through other people's eyes and sort of comes at it from different and then jumps backwards and then jumps forwards, and it's much less linear in that way. Sorry, Aaron.
At the end of the day, I think that is because a lot of the times, I'm not saying this is an absolute, but
no,
you see women and men have different traits. So men are more likely to be assertive, dominant, like maybe a little bit egocentric, while women are more likely to be a bit more caring, you know, like emotionally, you know, aware. So I do feel that a lot of it is down to generally the assertiveness of these male philosophers. Like in addition, there are many like female philosophers that we don't really hear much about, like Hypatia, for example. Like, you know, Hypatia was basically killed for being a female philosopher.
Wow.
I mean, I would like to tag on then, just for the sake of covering all those bases. There's obviously the question, I mean, I'm not going to get into this because we would be here forever, of whether these qualities that we say are associated with with women and associated with men are naturally biologically predetermined, or whether because we are constantly socialized from birth to act in those ways, that they're the ways that we act.
I mean,
It's a
I think
big
they've pretty much decided that it's 50-50 nature versus nurture, you know, that I mean, not exactly, and not in every person and not in every case, of course, but pretty much nature, nurture, it's 50-50. So it's your genes and your environment obviously comes into question with the sort of comes in with free will and stuff like that. That's another one, isn't it? Like how your traits are predetermined. But yeah, it is generally considered in the scientific world to be 50-50. What determines your traits.
But then there's also the problem that the scientific world, I mean, there's some really great feminist literature at the moment that sort of, well, at the moment for a while, that I'm not going to call it an attack on science because it's really not what it is, but that the entire kind of scientific process and base itself, that our entire really knowledge of the world today is seen through, is masculine.
Of course.
It's a masculine way of knowing the world, which is incredibly interesting stuff to read about if anyone sort of
wasn't
wants
that,
to look
I
into
mean,
it.
the male was always taken as the norm and the female was the abnormal in science up until what, the 80s or the 70s or something stupidly modern.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about what science tends to concentrate on, it's things that can be rationally explained, rationally boxed into neat little packages, where the things that are sort of, they tend to be related to women, emotions, for example, are these incredibly complicated things that don't fit into these categories.
But even what they tested on male rats, they would have discovered the contraceptive pill like years earlier if they'd actually tested on female rats instead of male rats.
I mean, let me just say though, what you're saying about viewing it through logical means, like that's what science is basically about though. Science is, you know, finding a logical means to explain this issue with scientific evidence, and it works because
scientific method,
you know, objective. Like, I mean, even if it is quote unquote more male, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not necessarily a bad thing as an individual study. The bad thing, or potentially bad thing, that comes into play is science's attempt to categorize as much as it can and to force things into categories. And the problem that occurs then is that the things that don't commit to that domain, the things about the world, about people that can't be explained like that, are either erased or they're ignored. And kind of with what Laura just mentioned then, with the studies with the rats, the problem that happens then is women and what's associated with women can be difficult to place in these categories, which means they just don't get studied, they don't get looked at, which is why women have to deal with ridiculous amounts of pain and mistreatment in medical industries and etc. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Make a good point.
Very good point. Excellent point. So do we have any more points about why philosophy is important, why we love it so much?
We've discussed everything, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we've
at great depth.
we've exhausted it, right?
We have.
Yeah.
Good.
So that was an amazing discussion. Thank you so much. And I think it's really nice to get to know the committee. And I do know that in Freshers Week, we're going to have an online stall where first years can come and chat to us or ask questions and find out about the Philsoc. Meg, did you want to talk about that?
So I'm not entirely sure what's going ahead yet, because originally it was supposed to be a physical stall, presumably in the Union, but the event has been cancelled due to lockdown, and they're not easing restrictions anytime soon, by the looks of it. So I think they're moving it all online. So what the plan, I think, will be is to just basically create a lot of like events and like little activities that we can post online for people to complete and interact with others, and kind of just get to know us as a committee, other first years, other second years, and just kind of bring everyone back, but do it safely from our own homes. I think the plan is.
Great. And if people do want to join the Philosophy Society in the first is it in the first month? Is there something about that, Meg?
Yeah, in the first month. So if you join within September, membership is free. So normally we charge £2.50. We charge £2.50 for the year to be a Philsoc member, but if you join within the first month, so like the first 3 weeks of uni basically, it is free for the entire year. And of course, why would you not want to be part of our amazing society? just bigging us up there.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we've got something running on the first week, but we will definitely update people with that. We're probably going to release another podcast, I would say, before freshers or during freshers to let people know. But we're hoping to have a social in Freshers Week, at least with the people from the Philsoc currently. Whether that involves the first years or not, I think we were talking about this. I don't know if Aaron mentioned having a social. I don't know. It was somebody mentioned having a social in the first 2 weeks.
I think we should have like definitely more socials. Like I think from now on, especially when COVID dies down, our socials will be twice a week.
Of course.
Yeah, like we'll have maybe a discussion and like a pub night or whatever, or like a discussion and night out.
Sounds like a plan, yeah.
Yeah, and depending on how everything goes with like people being on campus and stuff like that, that maybe we can do some online socials, some online quizzes, or some online, something.
Quiz nights sound like a plan, to be fair.
Yeah, quiz nights are a good one. I'm down for that.
Yeah,
definitely. So so we'll keep everybody updated about the Philsoc and our plans for socials and events. But for now, thank you very much. My name is Laura, and my co-host is
Alan. And thank you very much for watching.
Thank you for listening, guys. And the Philsoc committee has been Meg, who's the treasurer. Thank you, Meg.
thank you, guys.
And Pippa, our chairperson, or El Presidente, as we like to call her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pippa. And Paige, our lovely events coordinator and organizer of all things cool and great. Thank you, Paige.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Okay, see you guys soon. Thank you for listening.
See you later.